So my goal through all of this is to be 100% honest with you. We're going to talk about simple interest right now. Simple interest just doesn't show up in the world hardly ever. Most of the time when simple interest comes up, it's like a loan between friends or family. It does come up a couple of places where like it's big, huge simple interest being charged, and it's almost always out of your pocket. You're never paid the simple interest when it's big and huge. And so most of the times when simple interest is coming up, it's actually situations that you want to avoid. So we're going to talk about simple interest because it'll make the next step when we talk about compound interest a little bit easier, and it'll get some of the stuff out of the way. Compound interest is a little bit more complicated, but it's the type of interest that banks are using, credit cards use, and loans are almost always compound interest. So compound interest is really the more applicable real world thing, but we're going to talk simple interest for a little bit. So when we talk about interest, there's a couple of terms that we need to use along the way. The first one's principal. So when we talk about principal, we're talking about the initial amount of money. So if you're talking about saving, it's the amount of money that you've put into your savings account. If you're talking about a loan, it's the amount of money that you've taken for a loan. All right. Another thing that we talk about is the interest rate. So the rate is going to be given as a percentage, and that's the rate, that's how much interest you're going to expect to pay as a percentage of the principal. All right. So then when we talk about interest without the word rate attached to it, in that case, we're talking about the dollar amount of interest. All right. The term is how long the loan is or how long the savings is. So if you had like a savings bond, it's going to be like a 5-year savings bond. The term is 5 years. If you have a loan, you have to pay it back in 15 years. It's a 15-year loan. The term is how long it is. The repayment schedule, when we talk about that, we're going to talk about that some with simple interest and a lot more with compound interest. Repayment schedule is how often you're going to pay. So sometimes you're going to pay yearly, sometimes you're going to pay it all at the end of the term, sometimes you're going to pay monthly, weekly, even daily, right? So that's the basics of the terminology that we're going to use along the way. So we're going to do a couple of examples talking about simple interest, one in which we're going to be gaining interest and one in which we're going to be paying interest. So we can just see how that plays out. All right, for simple interest, we have a formula that we're going to use. It's going to be our friend through this. So I is going to stand for interest. This is going to be the interest paid or earned. Remember, it's the dollar amount, not the rate. P is going to stand for principal. So the principal, again, is the initial dollar amount that you're either investing or borrowing. The R here is going to stand for rate. This is our interest rate. And the T is going to stand for time or the term of the loan. All right. So as we go through this, we're going to be using that formula, and because it's an equation with 3 variables there, we basically, any problem that we do with simple interest is going to have to fill in 3 of those 4 variables so that we can solve for the 4th one. So one of the ways that simple interest gets applied, it happens with bonds fairly regularly. So with bonds, what's going to happen is you're going to have a certain amount of money that you're going to put in. There's going to be what's called a face value. So say we have a face value of $2,000. Right? And then you're also going to be told an APR. Right? Now, APR gets tossed around a whole lot. And the APR stands for the annual percentage rate. And that has to do with how you're earning interest. All right. So whenever you see APR financing, it's the annual percentage rate that they're talking about. So let's say our annual percentage rate is 3%. All right. So what this is saying is every year I'm going to earn 3%. Right. So then another thing, notice I have a 5-year bond here. So my term is 5 years. So the face value of a bond is what it's going to be worth when we cash it out. So this is actually the future value of my bond. All right. So this is future value. So notice with my simple interest formula, I had I equals PRT. Now, I was interest, and the interest was being found with the principal, the rate, and the time. But this wasn't going to tell me what the future value was. It's just telling me the interest. So if I want to know the future value, I'm definitely going to have that interest, but I'm also going to have whatever principal I put in the first place. So my future value actually equals the principal plus the principal times the rate times the time. All right. And sometimes we actually factor this out. So we have a principal times 1 plus the rate times the time. So we factor a p out. So in my example here, I have my future value. So I know that it's going to be worth $2,000. And that's going to equal, I don't know what my principal is that I'm putting into this initially. So my principal plus my principal times, the rate is always as a decimal. So I'm going 0.03 for my 3% times my term of 5. And I need to solve this for my principal. So this is my only variable left in it, right? It's a p, and even though there's 2 of them, it's my only variable. It's only one letter. So what I need to do is combine my like terms. So I'm going to do that by factoring a p out. So I'll have $2,000 equals p times 1 plus 0.03 times 5. So might do this as some scratch work over here. 5 times 3 is 15, and I have 2 decimal places, so I'll have 0.15. All right, so then I do my addition in my parentheses there. So I have 2,000 equals the principal times 1 plus 0.15. And now if sorry about that, should be 1.15, right? I should actually add, not write the same thing twice. So now if I divide 2,000 by 1.15, I'll have what my principal would be. So 2,000 divided by 1.15 is going to equal my principal. So if I do that, I've got $1,739 and 13 cents is going to be my principal. So what this is telling me is if I pay in today $1,739.13 in 5 years with this bond, I'll have $2,000. Another place that you might see simple interest is in a payday loan. These are really short term, like usually you have like a week or less to pay them off, where you can borrow some amount of money, usually not more than $1,000. And it's basically like saying, I'm going to get paid on Friday. I need the money on Monday. And so I'm going to borrow the money from you on Monday. And when I get paid on Friday, I pay you back. So here's an example of this. They're going to charge $15 for every $100 lent. So they lend you $100, you owe them $15 more than that back. All right? So the term of the loan is going to be, let's say, 1 week. That's not uncommon for these places. All right? So you have 1 week to pay them back your principal plus your interest. And if you miss that, then it's problems. All right? So let's say I need $300. The interest that I'm going to pay on that is $15 for every $100. So I'm going to pay, my interest is going to equal 3 times the $15. So I'm going to pay $45 in interest. All right. So it may not sound too bad, but let's take a look at the way that looks in terms of like a full year. So remember, interest equals the principal times the rate times the time, right? So my interest was $45. My principal was $300. I don't know what the interest rate was. And the time that I had it was 1 week. So let's put weeks in terms of years here. So 1 week equals 1 out of, remember, there's 52 weeks in a year, right? So 1 out of 52 years, 1/52nd of a year. So this is times 1/52, right? So then I can solve this for the rate and find out just how good or bad this option is. So if I do that, I need to combine like terms. So I'll have $45 equals, and I'll do 300 times 1/52. Which will equal 5.7692. We'll stop there. Times R. In general, you can round to 3 or 4 decimal places as a pretty safe thing to do. And then we need to divide to solve for R. So we take $45 and we'll divide that by 5.7692. And that's going to be our interest rate. So we divide 45 divided by 5.7692. So we get 7.8, a whole bunch of zeros is our rate. Now, if you're thinking 7.8% doesn't sound too bad, remember, this is the decimal form. So to find the interest rate in a percentage, this is actually 780% interest over the course of a year. So this is a huge interest rate.